Hello, hello.
Hi, Libna.
Hi, Sadaram. It's so nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Thanks for
This is my
organizing.
mentor, everyone watching and listening.
Mm.
It's great to see you here. Today is Mental Health Awareness Day, as you know, and we've had an incredible conference of 3 days of learning and growing together. So it's really wonderful to have you join this movement. Um, I'm going to introduce you if that's okay, and then shift to
Fun.
the questions.
Yeah,
I'm very privileged to introduce Dharam Kaur, who is a naturopathic doctor. She's also the CEO and co-director of Compassionate Inquiry, a community that I'm proud to belong to. She started working alongside Dr. Gabor Mate since 2018, specifically developing the Compassionate Inquiry training. And she's passionate about Kundalini Yoga, naturopathic medicine, and environmental sustainability. Did I get that right?
yes, you did.
Okay, wonderful. So I'm gonna, as we have a short segment of 25 minutes, I'm gonna dive right through to the questions, if that's okay.
Sure.
Um, the first question that I have for you is maybe to tell the audience a little bit more about compassionate inquiry and how that is relevant for workplaces. I think that's something that our audience here are mainly investors, CEOs, HR leaders. We have two HR leaders from Guinness World Records and from VaynerX speaking today, and also a lot of mental health professionals. So what is compassionate inquiry and how do we apply that concept to a workplace?
Thank you, Libna. So, compassionate inquiry is a psychotherapeutic approach created by Dr. Gabor Mate, and then I helped him structure it into a program that could be taught to others. And we've trained several thousand people as practitioners of compassionate inquiry. And it's based on two things, compassion and inquiry. So when we work with somebody one-on-one, um, we are working with them from a place of deep respect, of allowing them to take the lead, of trusting that the wisdom lies within them, and of creating space for them to feel safe, to be vulnerable, and for them to decide, in every session that we have, what their intention is for this session, and then we work with that. So there's no trying to fix anybody. There's no trying to guide somebody, but it's really trusting that there's an innate process in each of us that wants to grow and that has the guidance is within and the capacity is within each of us. And sometimes what we need is to be held in a safe, relational, empathetic um, container to allow that wisdom to come forth and to allow emotions to be experienced, to allow the truth to be experienced of what's important for us in the present moment. So in this psychotherapy approach, one of the things that we're constantly doing is bringing awareness to what the client experiences in the body. And that would be sensations, emotions, as well as what the client is making it mean. What interpretation do they have about a particular situation? And quite often, the emotional piece is unconscious. Many people are disconnected from their bodies. And so we may be living a life where that's not congruent with what we're really feeling or experiencing on an embodied level. And when that incongruence is there, then we can have physical, mental, emotional symptoms. We get sick because we're not meant to be incongruent in our lives. We're meant to be whole and integrated. And so compassion inquiry helps to create that integration and bring alive what's true from the body so that the person can reflect and have choice about how they might want to change. It also helps to connect the individual to the unconscious drivers and beliefs that often we brought forth from childhood, particularly when there's been childhood trauma. The universal belief of I'm not good enough, or the belief I'm not important, I'm not lovable. These sorts of beliefs limit us, and they're very, very, very prevalent. So when we can make those conscious and then turn them around through compassion, and then there's a breakthrough for the individual, and then they have more freedom, more choice in the way they move forward in their lives. So I hope that's a short description of what compassion inquiry is.
It is, and I've certainly seen a lot of these breakthroughs. How can we bring these to the workplace when everybody in the workplace is in hyper growth mode and hyper achievement mode, which is more or less the exact opposite of what we're talking about?
Yeah. Well, the one thing we can do is to bring to the workplace short breaks, whether it's a break that includes mindfulness, a break that includes a breathing practice, a break that includes yoga or movement or a walk outside. But we get disconnected when we don't have breaks.
Mm,
The body physiologically needs a break about every 2.5 hours, a break in which we can reset and tune into ourselves. So that would be one thing, is to bring awareness of that into the workplace,
mhm,
and perhaps have some training for people in the workplace in mindfulness or in yoga or in just listening to the body, paying attention. What are the sensations right now? What am I feeling right now? Where's my tension right now? And investigating, exploring that a little bit to understand what the body is communicating with us. So that would be one thing. The second thing would be to bring, I know of a few of our organizations that have hired a compassion inquiry practitioner to work with the staff in that organization who deal with a lot of trauma.
mm,
In some police forces around the world, the police force has hired a compassion inquiry practitioner to help the officers deal with the trauma they're experiencing on a daily basis, and that helps them tremendously. So when it comes down to it, we all need somebody to talk to
mm.
about what's going on for us. And ideally, we need someone to talk to who also can bring us into connection with our body, our emotions, those sensations. And that's what compassion inquiry does. So, uh, those would be two ideas of having practitioners in the workplace, creating these little breaks so we become more attuned to our own bodies in the workplace. We also do have in Compassion Inquiry a short course that we've taken into different organizations and workplaces, hospitals being one, schools being another, where we can teach the staff these principles of compassion inquiry so that they can start to integrate them in their worldview and in their understanding about how to work with their staff.
I love that. And I noticed one of the questions that we got is that a lot of people don't like their job and stay in that job because they have to
Yeah.
provide for their families. Um, and and if they do leave, they're leaving a bad boss. They're not necessarily leaving the organization because they don't like the organization, right? So it could be either or. The question that I have for you is, if I was to come to you and tell you that, would you um, encourage me more to work on myself and manage my own triggers? Or like, what would you advise somebody who is stuck in a job because they have to provide for their family temporarily until they're able to shift?
Well, the first thing is in Compassion Inquiry, we don't give advice.
When I was asking you that, I was like,
Is that the answer has to come from you. So if you were to come to me and say, I don't like my job, what should I do? What might I, let me just, I would ask you first about, what do you believe about yourself?
Mm,
Who are you? Who do you think you are in this job? So we would uncover the core belief.
mm,
And we would uncover the core belief that you have with your boss, if it's your boss, that you have this. And I've done this many times with clients. And then we find out it's not the boss, it's your projection on your boss
mm,
that comes from your own childhood trauma and the fear you have inside of you that's preventing you from being authentic with your boss or for asking for what you need. And so that's where, and then bringing you into the body to explore that fear, taking you back to the childhood experience to see when was the first time you experienced this fear and you believed you were of no value, right? That's often what it is. Or you weren't important, or you weren't seen, or you weren't heard. So there are some of the core beliefs that this hypothetical person would have who is struggling with their boss. But what we recognize, and Lubna, I know you know this, the beauty of it is it's a golden opportunity for that individual to grow with that boss because that particular situation, uncomfortable as it is the growth medium for them to become authentic and to connect with their truth, their authenticity, their power, and to speak up, which they couldn't do in their childhood, but now they're an adult and possibly they can. Now, if they can't, if they speak up and the circumstance doesn't change and the boss is disrespectful, or the boss says, sorry, and I'm not going to talk to you, something like that, then it's the person would have to make a decision. I would never tell them what to do, but then they would have a decision to make. Why are you there? And to explore what else is keeping them there. And if it's true that there's no other place for them where they can find to make a living to feed their family.
And
So
you
we
were
just
getting
all these.
you were getting a lot of hearts as you were explaining all of that. I hope you saw them on the side.
I did. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. You were speaking as you were describing all of this about the importance of also coming back to your truth, right? If we were to look at the definition of coming back to your truth according to you, or coming back to your essence, to your purpose, how would you define a formula for coming back to your, if there is one, or if you could make one up, what is the formula for finding your purpose and coming back to your truth?
I do have a formula,
Amazing.
and I call it the destiny formula. And I
Okay.
use this as an exercise for people in some of my groups.
Okay.
So the first thing is to write a list of 10 things that give you joy.
Okay.
And they would be both being and doing, not just doing, but being and doing. Maybe 5 things that give you joy just by being, like being by the water, or being in the forest, or being with my grandchildren, something like that. And then 5 things of doing that are joyful, like teaching. I get a lot of joy out of teaching. And then that's the first list. The second list is 10 things that give you meaning, sense of fulfillment, that you're passionate about, that get you up in the morning, because there's meaning there. And again, that can be partly passive, like spending time with grandchildren, or it can be very active, like changing the world in some way, And then the third list is a list of your talents, your gifts, your skills, your capacities. What are you good at? What are you naturally good at? And then you have these 3 lists. So then you create 2 sentences. The first sentence is I am, and you pull out of the lists, I am a something person, and you say, I am a entrepreneurial, creative, courageous, imaginative person, whatever that might be. And then the second sentence combines the first 2 lists. My destiny is to. And you look at those things that give you joy, and you look at those things that give you a sense of purpose and meaning, and you gather them together, and you come up with a sentence that somehow integrates them both. And now you have a direction, almost like a compass for the rest of your life. It has to be wide enough that it contain a lot of things, and not so narrow, but it has to be also narrow enough that it's not just absolutely expansive and there's no direction. But that's what I do. And then the part of the issue is that many of us in our lives have never been mirrored. People haven't seen the possibility. The possibility in us has never been mirrored. And whether our parents didn't see who we could be, or we got the message that we weren't good enough, we weren't mirrored, or the teachers maybe never did it, or your bosses never did it. So what we do in these groups when we have this exercise is we put people together, maybe 5 or 6 people, and somebody reads their destiny statement, and then the group reads it back to them. And it's just such a beautiful thing, such a beautiful thing. And then that can be like the anchor. I believe we all came here with a specific purpose. We're here, each of us, and we're part of a whole collective. And ideally, we're here together to create a better world and to evolve, consciously together. And so each of us has a role to play. And it's being able to recognize what that is, and then have the courage to do it, and peel away the barriers, which are often hidden unconscious beliefs, and find people that can mirror us to support us so that we can do what we came here to do.
I love that. And I heard you say also in the Compassionate Inquiry podcast, you spoke about purpose and you spoke about how you feel like you're well supported by the universe in order to be able to achieve what you are here to achieve. I think it's
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. One more thing, Lumna. So, in Compassion Inquiry, we talk about the mind creates the world, is what the Buddha said. So, and we know the power of intention.
Mm-hmm.
Intention is super powerful. So if somebody just creates that destiny statement and they just read it once, it's a little bit of intention. That intention is like a magnet. We've stated it. We send that message out. And because everything's interconnected, something's going to happen. And then we have to be ready when these opportunities come forth. But it's like there's a commitment required. We each have to commit to our purpose. And we don't need to figure it all out, but we have to commit to it. And first we have to figure out, we don't need to have to know the whole strategy about how it's going to unfold, because it's not up to us. But we do have to name it for ourselves, discover it for ourselves. Yeah.
Amazing. My team is already pinging me because people want to ask questions. So I'm going to do one last question with you, if that's okay, and shift it over to the audience. So one of the things that I've been doing with all the speakers that I've personally interviewed is we play a small game of Would You Rather, and it's either or. Would you be willing to play the game?
Sure.
I
Sure.
played it with Gabor also. So would you rather purpose or profit?
Purpose. Forget the profit.
Well, we need both. Would you rather authenticity or attachment?
Authenticity.
And meditation or movement?
Meditative movement.
Oh, I love that. Extra hour of sleep to do something you love, or extra hour of sleep just simply to sleep? Sorry, extra hour to sleep or extra hour to do something you love? I'm sorry, I read that wrong.
That's my problem. I always give up the sleep to do what I love.
Okay. If you had one word that defines you, Saddaram in one word, what would it be?
Connected.
I love that. I love that. And if you could go back and give advice to your 8-year-old self, what would you say?
Just do it. I've got you covered.
Love that. And if you could see yourself when you're 80, what would you want to see?
I do this one occasionally, so I would want to see myself very fit and active and still working, but also enjoying time in nature, time with family, having adventures, reading, and still making a difference in the world.
I'm sure you will.
Thank you.
One last one before I hand it over to the audience. I know that you are doing so many things. I don't know how you do all of these things, but I see you doing so many things. If you could pick one task that AI could take over from you, what would that task be? We have somebody who is joining us from the World Bank this afternoon who is focusing on mental health and AI. So that's why I asked that question.
Answering the emails I don't want to answer.
Oh, I love that. That's a good business on its own
Yeah.
if we can create that. Okay, wonderful. I'm going to turn it over to the audience in case we have any questions from the audience.
In Compassionate Inquiry, you say that people thrive when met with compassion. What happens in workplaces when this compassion is missing?
Oh, that's a big question. So when the compassion is missing in the workplace, people don't thrive. So the meaning goes away, I would think. And the sense of connection that everybody needs is not going to be there if compassion is not in the workplace. People will suppress their feelings. They won't speak their truth. if compassion is not present. There'll be inner resentment, there'll be bickering around the side, there'll be backstabbing. And it'll be a toxic environment. And people will leave.
I wanted to ask you about your knowledge of obsessive compulsive personality disorder. That's what I struggle with. If you're familiar with the Enneagram, I'm an Enneagram 1, and I've done a lot of therapy, EMDR to work with childhood trauma. My mom has similarities, and I want to know what to expect for myself in this struggle. What is expectable, and what are sort of reasonable expectations to have for myself, and then suggestions on managing that.
Well, I would, in compassionate inquiry, we don't focus on the diagnosis. We're aware of the diagnoses and the symptoms that are contained within the diagnoses. But we treat every mental and even physical illness to some degree as a coping strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And so with obsessive compulsive disorder, that behavior is doing something, it's providing some sort of function for the individual. So that's the first thing we'd explore. What's it doing for you? And it's likely covering up some sort of emotional pain or sadness or fear or something. Would you agree with that, Katrina? Or something?
Yes.
Yeah. So we would explore that. And in compassion inquiry, everything goes back to, not everything, but mostly we go back to early childhood experiences to find out what happened that shouldn't have happened. And we almost, through the experience of working with the CI compassion inquiry practitioner, it's almost like we rewrite that experience, because the compassion inquiry practitioner becomes the stand-in, not consciously, but through empathetic abiding presence, becomes the stand-in for the person that wasn't there for that young child when these things happened. And it's through that relational piece, the connection between the client and the therapist, and the relational healing that happens, that it's almost like we can rewire those early memories. Instead of EMDR, it's through the relationship with the therapist and almost the reparenting that happens, that we can create some healing around those initial traumas that may have made you susceptible to that. So that's one piece. The other piece is that it's very important that you have tools for self-regulation, calming yourself. So we know that we don't heal, and we can't really examine ourselves unless we feel safe. And that safety is partly our responsibility within our own body, and partly the external environment can create that safety for us. But within our own body, it's the vagus nerve. That accounts for 80% of our parasympathetic response, which means rest, relax, heal, digest. So then it would be really important for you to do a lot of practices that bring on the vagus nerve. It could be a slow breathing exercise, it could be yoga, it could be walking in the forest, it could be singing, those sorts of things, to put them in your day so that you can train yourself. You can train your nervous system to be more relaxed. It's something you have to wire it in, At the same time you do that, you have the CI sessions that can help untangle whatever it is that happened that created this coping strategy for you. How does that sound?
Yeah. One of my therapists did take on the role of my dad, and I had one, man therapist who helped me work through that on exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So that's, maybe I need to do more of that currently, or the idea of plugging more of those little pockets of things throughout the day.
Yeah. And what we do in compassion inquiry, so the therapist is like the relational presence that you didn't have. But also we have this little piece in compassion inquiry when we work with what we call the other child. And when we do that, you take an imaginary other child that went through what you went through. And then one of the questions I ask is, if you were the parent of that other child, what would you do for them? And we activate that in you. So we activate the compassionate parent in you through the use of the other child. And so that's what's required, is for you to have the compassion for the inner child within you. But we have to do that first through another child, because there's so many defenses in the way. So that's a big piece. And after doing that several times in compassion inquiry sessions, it becomes more available that you can heal your own inner child. And the therapist needs to be there initially, so you can learn how to do it. You're basically trained in not consciously, but you just learn by doing through the modeling. And then that becomes easier for you. And then every time you have this obsessive compulsive urge, you can stop. Oh, this is the 3-year-old in me. What does she need right now? And have compassion for her with more understanding.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
Thank you, Katrina, and thank you, Dharam. I
You're
think we are at time. I'm so grateful for your time and for the gift of your presence with us today. It was lovely to have you, and we will be transitioning to the next segment now. Thank you
Thanks
so
so
much.
much, Livia. Nice to see you. Bye.